Today, we're uncovering how fundamental shifts in governance are, well, directly impacting your safety, your wallet, and the very foundation of our justice system.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. We're talking about things like the attempted assassination of Justice Kavanaugh.
Right, and then crushing inflation hitting, what was it, 8.6%?
Exactly, plus gas over $5 a gallon.
And then there's the border, over 6 million illegal encounters since 2021 linked to this devastating fentanyl crisis. These aren't separate things.
Not at all. Our sources really draw lines between them.
So our deep dive today connects these critical issues. We're looking at how policy choices might be creating these, well, profound challenges across America, basically giving you a shortcut to seeing the bigger picture.
It's definitely a complex web, and the sources we're drawing on, articles, reports, analyses, they really paint a stark picture of the pressures on our core institutions and, just everyday life.
Absolutely. Let's maybe start with judicial independence, because our sources suggest it's under a kind of siege we haven't really seen before.
That seems like a good place to start. Yep. The whole idea of the rule of law kind of hinges on judges being free from intimidation, right?
Exactly. But we're seeing these alarming threats. I mean, take the attempted assassination of Justice Kavanaugh back on June 8th.
Yeah, that was serious. A suspect travels all the way from California.
Right. Arrested with a gun, a knife, burglary tools, and admitted he intended to kill the justice.
And this is despite federal law, 18 U.S.C. section 1507, that specifically makes it a crime to protest outside a judge's home to influence them.
Yeah, section 1507. It's pretty clear law. But the enforcement, well, that's where questions arise.
And that specific incident, the Kavanaugh attempt, it didn't happen in a vacuum. Our sources point to the leak of the draft Roe v. Wade opinion.
Ah, yes, the leak.
As something that ignited what some reports are calling a reactionary wave of violence. Some sources even talk about an addiction to rage.
An addiction to rage?
Yeah,
that's quite a phrase. What does that mean in practical terms?
Well, according to these sources, it refers to this almost dangerous cycle where really intense emotional reactions aren't just expressed, but they're actively sought out, maybe even amplified by certain groups. It makes rational discussion really, really difficult.
Okay, I see. And the sources detail actual incidents, right? Like firebombings, vandalism.
Yeah, lots of them.
Yeah.
Targeting crisis pregnancy centers, religious institutions, places in Wisconsin, New York, Oregon, all over.
And some of the rhetoric was extreme. I remember seeing reports about groups like Ruth Sent Us saying things like, stuff your rosaries and your weaponized prayer because we'll be burning the Eucharist. I mean, that's pretty intense stuff.
It really is. And it brings us back to that question of enforcement you raised.
Right.
What about that federal law, 18 U.S.C. section 1507?
Right, because the Supreme Court has upheld similar laws protecting homes, saying the First Amendment doesn't cover intimidation.
Exactly. But we see reports, widespread criticism actually, from 25 state attorneys general, lots of Republican members of Congress, criticizing Attorney General Merrick Garland for what they call a flat refusal to enforce that specific law.
So you have a law on the books, but the perception, at least according to these sources, is that it's not being consistently enforced.
And that inconsistency or perceived lack of enforcement can send mixed messages, can't it?
Well, yeah. Our sources point to things like former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki initially seeming to encourage protests outside judges' homes, though she did walk that back later, clarifying against violence.
Right. And then there was Senator Chuck Schumer's earlier comments directed at Justices Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, saying they'd pay the price and won't know what to hit you.
The concern raised in our sources is that this kind of rhetoric, combined with lax enforcement, could potentially embolden people to cross the line into illegal intimidation.
And zooming out a bit, the bigger picture here is that failing to enforce these laws really chips away at judicial impartiality and independence.
Which are just foundational to American democracy. It's not just about protecting individual judges, it's about the integrity of the whole system.
Exactly. If justice can be swayed by pressure or, mob tactics, then the whole system is weakened.
Okay, so while the justice system is facing these pressures, there's another huge pressure point that hits closer to home for most people.
The wallet.
Right. Your household budget. I mean, what good is a stable society if families can't even afford to live in it?
Yeah, the economic burden is undeniable right now.
Yeah.
Our sources really lay out the stark reality, that 8.6% inflation rate back in May.
And gas prices, over $5 a gallon nationally, highest ever.
These aren't just numbers on a page. they translate into real pain for families.
For sure, our sources give examples like Pennsylvania households spending, an extra $70 a month on housing, $240 more on transportation?
That adds up. The calculation mentioned is over $20,000 more spent since 2021 just for families to tread water to maintain their standard of living.
It's a massive erosion of purchasing power, hits you every single day.
And the forecasts aren't exactly rosy either. We see Bloomberg's models, experts like Larry Summers, former Obama advisor, predicting a recession is almost certain by 2024.
So who or what is to blame? Our sources present a few perspectives, particularly highlighting a conservative viewpoint.
Right. That viewpoint often points towards the administration's energy policies, labeling them climate alarmist.
The argument being that these policies have artificially reduced the world's supply of energy?
Exactly, leading directly to higher prices. And they often contrast this with previous policies under which the U.S. apparently achieved energy independence for the first time in, 75 years.
So that's one clear line drawn, policy choice leading to price hikes. But there are other criticisms too, right? Like about the push for electric vehicles.
Yeah, sources mention figures like Judge Pirro warning about the grid not being ready, risking rolling brownouts. The idea that the infrastructure just isn't there yet for a full EV transition.
And then there's this whole ESG investing thing, environmental, social, governance.
That's become a real flashpoint. Critics argue ESG funds often carry higher risks and charge steeper fees.
The claim being it's politically motivated mismanagement, that it can actually hurt retirement savings by prioritizing agendas over returns.
That's the core criticism, yes. That these social or environmental goals might be undermining the basic fiduciary duty to maximize financial returns. And you see legislative responses, like the Retire Act mentioned, trying to push back and prioritize financial outcomes over what critics call woke policies.
Okay, so we have judicial independence under stress, economic stability looking shaky, and our sources connect these to another area causing deep concern.
The border.
The border, and specifically how the situation there links to safety and the fentanyl crisis.
It's framed very much as a national security crisis in our sources.
Yeah.
The numbers cited are staggering: over 6 million illegal encounters at the southwest border since January 2021.
Plus at least 1.5 million known gotaways, people who were detected but not apprehended.
And this is often contrasted sharply with what sources describe as the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years, supposedly inherited from the previous administration.
The sources are pretty direct in assigning responsibility, aren't they? Accusing Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas of a dereliction of duty.
Yes, claiming he intentionally undermined immigration laws and pursued an extreme agenda of open borders. There's even mention of Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz confirming that DHS doesn't have operational control of the border.
The suggestion seems to be that this isn't just happening, but that it's almost by design. How?
Well, the main mechanism highlighted is the alleged abuse of parole authority.
Parole authority? You mean letting people in temporarily?
Kind of, but the claim is it's being used on a mass scale to release illegal aliens into the U.S. without proper vetting or even starting removal proceedings. This, the sources argue, violates federal law, specifically 8 U.S.C. 212 D5.
And the effect on the ground.
Overwhelmed Border Patrol agents. Sources talk about severe staffing challenges, burnout, impacts on health and morale, because the volume is just too high.
And this border situation has a direct and frankly terrifying link to the fentanyl crisis.
Absolutely devastating. Fentanyl is now the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45. That statistic alone is just sobering.
It really is. It brings the crisis right into our communities, potentially affecting anyone.
And the scale of it.
Yeah.
Our sources detail how this stuff gets here. In 2022, the DEA seized, get this, over 58 million fake pills with fentanyl.
58 million pills.
And 13,000 pounds of fentanyl powder. Enough, they calculate, for a lethal dose for every single American.
Just staggering. And we see local impacts, too, like Orange County seeing seizures jump massively between 2021 and 2022.
It puts the scale in perspective, doesn't it?
It does. And how does it work? Who's behind this flood?
The sources point directly at Mexican transnational criminal organizations, TCOs, like the Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels.
They're the manufacturers and distributors.
Primarily. They get precursor chemicals, often from China, make the fentanyl cheaply. In Mexico, we're taking maybe 10 cents a pill.
10 cents.
Yeah, and then sell it here for $10, $30 a pill. Huge profit margin. And they're savvy. using social media for advertising and sales. Apparently, that accounts for 40% of cases in one big DEA operation.
Wow. So it's a sophisticated business.
Extremely.
Right.
And the money laundering aspect is also highlighted. Sources describe it as perhaps the most sophisticated form of money laundering that's ever existed, run by Chinese organizations cleaning the drug money for the cartels, getting around China's own cash controls.
A truly global and deadly network. Okay, so we've tied together judicial issues, economic strain, the border, and fentanyl. The last thread seems to be about accountability and transparency within the government itself.
Right. And here, our sources bring the FBI under scrutiny. There are references to the January 6th investigation, for example.
What about it?
The claim presented is that the violence was pre-planned by radical individuals, challenging narratives that might attribute it solely to, say, a presidential speech that day.
Yeah.
It suggests a deeper organization.
Interesting. And other concerns about the FBI?
Yes, allegations regarding data and disinformation. Sources mention accusations that the FBI worked to discredit leaked information about Hunter Biden. And reports of constant and pervasive contact with platforms like Twitter, sometimes over minor things like joke tweets, which critics see as attempts to control the flow of information.
There were also legal questions raised about searches.
Yeah, sources mention the FBI facing questions about using forbidden information from a 702 search, that's a specific type of foreign intelligence surveillance, and conducting potentially illegal searches. It raises concerns about adherence to legal boundaries.
All of this seems to fuel a demand for more transparency, doesn't it?
It certainly does, and that's highlighted by the example of the Heritage Foundation filing a Freedom of Information Act request, a FOIA request.
About the protests at justices' homes.
Exactly. And they were granted expedited processing specifically because of widespread and exceptional media interest and, significantly, possible questions about the government's integrity.
So the system itself acknowledged the public's right to know and the potential questions about government actions.
It underscores that broader demand for transparency when trust seems to be eroding.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together, judicial security under threat, families squeezed economically, a border crisis fueling a drug epidemic, and questions about government accountability.
It paints a picture, doesn't it? A picture of foundational institutions and just daily life facing really profound strains. The sources suggest a significant shift in how governance is impacting almost every part of American life.
So as you, our listener, reflect on these converging challenges that our sources lay out, maybe you'd consider this. When foundational laws seem disregarded, when economic stability erodes and national security feels compromised, what actions must we demand from our leaders to restore liberty, prosperity, and the rule of law for every American?
That's really the core question, isn't it? What needs to happen to shore up these foundations? It's something these sources definitely compel us to think about long after this discussion ends.